Picture this, you're standing on stage in front of 500 people, expecting applause, but instead you watch your entire career get destroyed with one cruel announcement. That night, I learned that humiliation burns like acid, but it can also become the fuel for the most satisfying revenge anyone could imagine. My name is Victoria Kane. I'm 33 years old, and this is the story of how the worst night of my life became the beginning of my greatest victory. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, or felt the sting of public humiliation, you'll understand every emotion I'm about to share. Drop a comment below if you've ever had to smile through your worst moment. I'd love to hear your story. And if you want more jaw-dropping tales of justice served cold, hit that subscribe button because trust me, you won't want to miss what's coming next. The crystal chandelier above the ballroom cast dancing shadows across 500 faces, all turned toward the stage where I stood clutching my champagne glass. The annual staff gala was supposed to be routine, handshakes, fake smiles, maybe a boring speech about company achievements. I had attended 8 of these events, climbing the corporate ladder one successful project at a time. My boss, Mr. Harrison, stepped up to the microphone with that trademark smirk I had grown to hate over the past year. He adjusted his expensive tie and cleared his throat. Ladies and gentlemen, tonight we celebrate not just our successes, but also necessary changes for our company's future. The room fell silent. Something felt wrong. The energy had shifted, and my stomach clenched with sudden dread. Harrison's eyes found mine across the crowd, and his smile widened. Not the kind of smile you give someone you're about to praise. This was the smile of a predator who had cornered his prey. Victoria Kane has been with us for 8 years, he continued, his voice carrying easily across the hushed ballroom. My heart began to race. This wasn't supposed to be about me. This wasn't how these announcements usually went. Unfortunately, Harrison continued, his voice dripping with false sympathy, sometimes we must make difficult decisions. Victoria, your services are no longer needed. Consider this your official termination. The words hit me like a physical blow. Gasps echoed through the crowd. Someone dropped a glass, and it shattered against the marble floor with a sound that seemed to mirror my breaking heart. 500 pairs of eyes stared at me with mixtures of shock, pity, and relief that they weren't in my position. My legs felt like they might give out, but I forced myself to remain standing. 8 years of dedication, countless late nights, successful campaigns that had made this company millions, all of it dismissed in front of everyone I worked with. The humiliation burned through my chest like molten lava. But Harrison wasn't finished with his performance. He gestured grandly toward a young woman standing near the front tables. I'm pleased to announce that Stephanie Collins will be taking over Victoria's position effective immediately. She represents the fresh perspective and innovation this company needs to thrive in the modern market. Stephanie was 25, blonde, and had been dating Harrison for 3 months. Everyone knew it, but no one talked about it. Until now. The applause that followed felt like nails on a chalkboard. Stephanie beamed and waved as if she had earned this position through merit rather than sleeping with the boss. My face burned with shame, but I forced my expression to remain neutral. I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break down. This company has no room for dead weight, Harrison added, his words cutting through me like broken glass. We must always evolve or risk being left behind. Dead weight. After 8 years of building relationships, securing major clients, and working weekends while he played golf, he called me dead weight. The irony would have been funny if it weren't destroying my life in real time. I took a slow sip of champagne, buying myself precious seconds to compose my next move. Every instinct screamed at me to run, to escape this nightmare, but something deeper kept me rooted to the spot. Maybe it was pride, or maybe it was the first spark of what would become an unquenchable fire for revenge. The crowd began to murmur among themselves. Some looked uncomfortable with the public execution they had just witnessed. Others seemed to be calculating how this power shift might affect their own positions. A few brave souls shot me sympathetic glances. "Any words, Victoria?" Harrison asked, extending the microphone toward me with mock generosity. The spotlight felt like it was burning holes through my designer dress, the one I had bought specifically for this event, thinking it might be the night I finally got the promotion I deserved. Instead, it became the night I lost everything. I considered my options. I could unleash 8 years of frustration right here, right now. Tell everyone exactly what kind of man they were applauding. Expose the questionable deals, the cutting corners, the way he took credit for other people's work. But something stopped me. "Thank you for the opportunity to grow," I said simply, handing him back the microphone. My voice was steady, professional, completely controlled. "I wish the company continued success." The lies tasted bitter on my tongue, but I forced a smile. Harrison looked almost disappointed that I hadn't provided more entertainment for his audience. He had wanted me to break, to scream, to give him justification for his cruelty. Behind me, I could hear whispered conversations starting up. "Did you see her face? I can't believe he did that publicly. That poor woman." The pity was almost worse than the humiliation. As I walked off the stage, my heels clicking against the polished wood, Harrison grabbed my arm just above the elbow. His grip was firm enough to leave marks, and his breath smelled like expensive whiskey and cheap cologne. "Don't even think about making a scene," he whispered close to my ear, his words meant only for me. "Just disappear gracefully, and maybe I'll give you a decent reference." The threat was clear, but so was his fear. He was worried about what I might do, what I might say. Good. He should be worried. I looked him directly in the eyes and smiled, a real smile this time. "Of course, Mr. Harrison. I wouldn't dream of causing any trouble." He released my arm, satisfied that he had cowed me into submission. If only he knew that his casual cruelty had just planted the seeds of his own destruction. I had spent 8 years learning every secret this company held, every client relationship, every weakness in their business model. Harrison thought he was getting rid of a problem. Instead, he had just created his worst nightmare. I walked toward the exit with my head held high, ignoring the whispers and stares that followed me like shadows. The walk from the stage to the ballroom exit felt like the longest journey of my life. Every step was measured, deliberate, professional. I wouldn't run. I wouldn't stumble. I wouldn't give anyone the satisfaction of seeing me fall apart. Colleagues I had worked with for years suddenly found their drinks fascinating or discovered urgent conversations with people they had been ignoring all evening. The few who made eye contact offered weak, apologetic smiles that somehow made everything worse. "Victoria," whispered Amanda from accounting as I passed her table. "I'm so sorry. This is wrong." I paused just long enough to squeeze her shoulder. "Thank you," I managed, my voice barely audible. At least someone had the courage to acknowledge what had just happened. Near the coat check, I overheard 2 managers discussing my termination. "She was their best project manager," one said. "This is going to backfire spectacularly." The other just shrugged. Harrison's made up his mind. Probably wanted to make room for his girlfriend without it looking too obvious. Too obvious. The entire company knew exactly why I had been fired, and it had nothing to do with my performance. That knowledge should have made me feel better, but it only deepened the humiliation. In the bathroom, I finally allowed myself a moment of privacy. The face staring back at me from the ornate mirror looked pale but composed. My makeup was still perfect, my hair still in place. From the outside, I looked like someone who had everything under control. Inside, I felt like I was drowning. I gripped the marble countertop and took 3 deep breaths. This was not how my story would end. 8 years of my life, my expertise, my relationships, Harrison thought he could just erase all of that with one humiliating announcement. He was wrong. My phone buzzed with a text message. It was from James Peterson, a client I had worked with extensively over the past 2 years. Heard what happened at the gala. Call me tomorrow. We need to talk. My heart skipped a beat. James ran a successful consulting firm and had always praised my work. More importantly, he had been quietly poaching talent from my company for months, offering better positions and higher salaries to top performers. I stared at the message for a long moment, then typed back, "I'll call you first thing in the morning." Maybe this nightmare was about to become an opportunity. Driving home through the empty city streets, I replayed every moment of the evening in my mind. Harrison's smug expression. Stephanie's triumphant smile. The shocked gasps from the crowd. The whispered conversations that followed me out of the ballroom. But mostly, I thought about all the things Harrison didn't know. He didn't know that I had copies of every major contract negotiated over the past 3 years. He didn't know that 5 of our biggest clients had specifically requested to work with me personally. He didn't know that I had been documenting his questionable business practices for months, initially as protection for myself. Most importantly, he didn't know that firing me publicly had just given me the motivation I needed to destroy everything he had built. I pulled into my driveway and sat in the car for several minutes, letting the silence wash over me. Tomorrow, I would start planning my comeback. Tonight, I would mourn the career I had lost and prepare for the war I was about to wage. Harrison thought he had won. He thought he had eliminated a threat and cleared the path for his girlfriend's promotion. Instead, he had just made the biggest mistake of his professional life. The game was about to begin. The next morning arrived gray and drizzling, matching my mood perfectly. I had barely slept, my mind racing with possibilities and plans. At exactly 9 o'clock, I called James Peterson. "Victoria," he answered on the first ring, his voice warm with sympathy. "I heard about last night. Harrison's an idiot." "That's one way to put it," I replied, surprised by how steady my voice sounded. "Meet me for coffee in an hour. Downtown, at that little place on 5th Street. We need to discuss your future." An hour later, I sat across from James in a cozy cafe, nursing a cup of coffee that I couldn't taste. He was a tall man in his 50s with graying hair and kind eyes that missed nothing. His consulting firm had been steadily growing for the past decade, and he had a reputation for treating employees fairly. "I've been watching what Harrison's been doing to that company," James said, stirring sugar into his coffee. "The man's destroying it from the inside. Losing you was just the final proof that he has no idea what he's doing." I waited for him to continue, afraid to hope for what I thought he might be offering. "I want you to come work for me," he said simply. "Not as an employee. As a partner." The word partner hung in the air between us like a lifeline. After years of working for someone who never appreciated my contributions, the idea of being an equal in a business relationship felt almost too good to be true. "There's a project I've been working on," James continued, leaning forward with excitement. "A major corporation is looking to overhaul their entire marketing strategy. It's worth millions, and it requires exactly the kind of expertise you've been developing for the past 8 years. My heart began to race, but I kept my expression neutral. "What kind of project?" James smiled. "The kind that would put us in direct competition with your former employer. In fact, I believe Harrison submitted a proposal for this same contract 3 weeks ago." The irony was beautiful. Harrison had fired me to make room for his inexperienced girlfriend, and now I would be competing against them for a contract that could make or break both companies. I should mention, James added, his eyes twinkling with mischief, the client specifically asked if you would be working on their account. Apparently, your reputation in the industry extends far beyond Harrison's company. I took a slow sip of coffee, buying time to process this incredible opportunity. What would you need from me? Everything you've got, James replied without hesitation. Your skills, your contacts, your knowledge of how the industry really works. I accept, I said, extending my hand across the small cafe table. James shook it firmly, and I felt something I hadn't experienced in months, hope. We spent the next 2 hours discussing details. The partnership would be official within a week. The major contract James had mentioned was indeed the same one Harrison had been desperately trying to secure for his company. It was worth enough money to fund operations for an entire year. More importantly, losing it would be a devastating blow to Harrison's already struggling firm. There's something else you should know, James said as we prepared to leave. 3 of your former colleagues have already reached out to me. They're interested in making a change if the right opportunity presents itself. I raised an eyebrow. Anyone I know? Amanda from accounting, Marcus from creative, and surprisingly, Tom from sales. Apparently, Harrison's management style is wearing thin on more people than just you. Tom was particularly interesting. He managed some of the company's biggest accounts and had built strong relationships with key clients over the past 5 years. If he left, he would likely take several major contracts with him. Don't actively recruit them, I said carefully. But if they reach out again, let them know we might have positions available soon. James smiled. I like the way you think. That afternoon, I returned to my former office to collect my personal belongings. The security guard, looking embarrassed, escorted me to my desk where a cardboard box waited. Someone had already packed most of my things, family photos, awards, the small potted plant I had been nurturing for 3 years. Harrison was nowhere to be seen, but Stephanie sat in what had been my chair, looking overwhelmed as she rifled through files she clearly didn't understand. She glanced up when I approached, her expression shifting from confusion to guilt. Victoria, she said quietly. I'm sorry about how everything happened. I studied her face, searching for genuine remorse. She was young, ambitious, and probably had no idea what she had gotten herself into. Harrison had used her as much as he had used me, just in different ways. Take my advice, I said, keeping my voice low. Learn the Johnson account inside and out. If you don't understand something, ask Amanda in accounting. She knows more about client management than anyone else here. Stephanie looked surprised by my kindness. Why are you helping me? Because Harrison won't, I replied simply. And when this all falls apart, it shouldn't be your fault. I picked up my box and walked out, leaving Stephanie to figure out how to fill shoes that were several sizes too big for her. Over the next week, I threw myself into preparing for the partnership with James. We met daily to review the major contract proposal, analyzing every detail and developing a strategy that would showcase our combined expertise. Meanwhile, subtle signs of trouble began emerging from my former company. Amanda texted me that 2 client meetings had been postponed due to scheduling conflicts, code for Stephanie being unprepared. Marcus called to say that a major presentation had been moved back 3 times because the creative concepts weren't meeting client expectations. Most tellingly, Tom reached out directly. Victoria, I need to talk to you. Things are falling apart here, and I'm starting to think Harrison made a huge mistake. We met for drinks that Friday evening. Tom looked exhausted, like he had been carrying the weight of the entire company on his shoulders. The Peterson account called yesterday, he said, referring to one of our biggest clients. They specifically asked when you were coming back. When I told them you had been let go, they went silent for about 30 seconds. Then they asked for my direct number and said they might need to reassess their relationship with the firm. I kept my expression neutral, but inside I felt a surge of satisfaction. Client loyalty was something that couldn't be bought or transferred. It had to be earned through years of consistent, excellent service. Hashtag, it's not just the Peterson account, Tom continued, running his hands through his hair. Henderson Industries is asking questions. So is the Morrison Group. They all want to know where you went and whether they can work with you directly. This was better than I had hoped. These weren't just clients. They were the backbone of Harrison's business. If even half of them decided to follow me to James's firm, it would be catastrophic for my former employer. What's Harrison saying about all this? I asked. Tom laughed bitterly. He's telling everyone that you were holding the company back, that your methods were outdated. But behind closed doors, he's panicking. Stephanie can't handle the workload, and he's starting to realize that maybe firing you wasn't his smartest move. And what are you thinking? I asked, though I already knew the answer from the desperation in his voice. I'm thinking I need to get out before this ship sinks completely, he said. James Peterson called me yesterday. Said there might be opportunities for experienced sales professionals at his firm. I smiled. James is a good man. He values loyalty and hard work. Are you saying I should take the meeting? I'm saying you should do whatever feels right for your career, I replied diplomatically. But if it helps, I think you'd thrive in an environment where your contributions are actually appreciated. The following Monday brought news that made me smile for the first time in weeks. Amanda called with an update that was almost too good to believe. You'll never guess what happened, she said, barely containing her excitement. The Henderson Industries presentation was a complete disaster. Stephanie showed up with the wrong materials, couldn't answer basic questions about their account history, and actually called their CEO by the wrong name. I winced despite myself. How wrong? She called Mr. Henderson, Mr. Harrison, 3 times before someone corrected her. The client walked out halfway through the meeting. The irony was perfect. Stephanie was so focused on impressing Harrison that she had literally confused the client with her boyfriend. It was the kind of mistake that would be talked about in industry circles for months. That's not even the best part, Amanda continued. Henderson called our office this morning and asked to speak with you directly. When the receptionist explained that you no longer worked here, he requested a meeting with James Peterson's firm. My heart raced. Henderson Industries was one of our biggest accounts, worth over $2 million annually. If they switched to James's firm, it would be a devastating blow to Harrison's bottom line. Have they reached out to James yet? I asked. Not yet, but I expect they will soon. Word travels fast in this business. By Thursday, 3 major clients had officially requested meetings with James's firm. The business community was small, and news of my firing had spread quickly through professional networks. Apparently, several companies were questioning the stability and judgment of a firm that would publicly humiliate a respected project manager. James was ecstatic. I've never seen anything like this, he said as we reviewed our suddenly packed calendar. It's like they're coming to us. They're not coming to us, I corrected. They're following relationships that took years to build. Harrison never understood that business is personal. That afternoon, I got a call that made my day even better. Mr. Peterson, no relation to James, wanted to schedule a lunch meeting to discuss transitioning his account to more stable management. The Peterson account alone was worth $800,000 annually. Combined with Henderson Industries and the Morrison Group, we were looking at over $3 million in new business that would transfer directly from Harrison's firm to ours. Meanwhile, Tom called with an update from inside enemy territory. Harrison's been in closed-door meetings all week, he reported. Word is that the board is asking serious questions about recent client losses. And Stephanie, she's not handling the pressure well. How so? She broke down crying in the middle of a staff meeting yesterday. Said she wasn't ready for this level of responsibility. I almost felt sorry for her. Almost. The next staff gala was scheduled for exactly 1 month after my humiliation. Normally, I wouldn't have given it a second thought. Why would I want to return to the scene of my public degradation? But this year was different. James received an invitation as a respected member of the business community. As his new partner, I would be attending as his guest. Are you sure about this? James asked when I suggested we go. It might be awkward. It might be, I agreed. But I think it's important for people to see that I didn't disappear. That I didn't let Harrison's cruelty destroy me. What I didn't tell James was that I had a deeper motivation. I wanted Harrison to see exactly what he had lost. I wanted him to understand that firing me hadn't eliminated a problem, it had created a competitor who knew all his weaknesses. The invitation specified cocktail attire, and I spent considerable time choosing the perfect dress. Something elegant but not flashy, confident but not aggressive. I wanted to look successful without appearing to try too hard. Most importantly, I wanted to look happy. Because for the first time in months, I genuinely was. The partnership with James was thriving beyond our wildest expectations. We had already secured 2 major contracts and had 3 more in the pipeline. Industry publications were starting to take notice of our rapid growth. The night of the gala arrived with perfect autumn weather. I met James at his office, and we arrived at the hotel together in his sleek black sedan. The same valet who had been working the previous year greeted us with a professional smile, though I thought I detected a hint of recognition in his eyes. Walking into the ballroom felt surreal. The same crystal chandelier, the same elegant decorations, the same backdrop where my career had been destroyed just 4 weeks earlier. But this time, I wasn't arriving as an employee hoping for recognition. I was arriving as a successful business owner. The difference was remarkable. Conversations paused as James and I entered. Several industry colleagues approached immediately to congratulate us on our recent successes. Word of our major contract wins had spread throughout the professional community. Victoria, called out Mrs. Chen from the Morrison Group. I've been hoping to run into you. We need to schedule that follow-up meeting we discussed. From across the room, I could see Harrison watching our interaction with growing alarm. He was dressed in the same expensive suit style he always favored, but something about his posture suggested the confidence was forced. Stephanie stood beside him, looking nervous and out of place. She kept glancing around the room as if searching for an escape route. Shall we go say hello? James asked quietly. We approached Harrison and Stephanie with casual confidence. I had rehearsed this moment in my mind dozens of times, but the reality felt different than I had imagined. Seeing Harrison up close, I realized how much smaller he seemed than he had a month ago. Harrison, James said warmly, extending his hand. Good to see you. You remember my business partner, Victoria Kane. The word partner hung in the air like a challenge. Harrison's eyes flicked between James and me, clearly struggling to process how quickly my circumstances had changed. Victoria, he said stiffly. Congratulations on your new position. Thank you, I replied with a genuine smile. It's been an incredible month. Amazing how quickly things can change when you're working with people who value your contributions. Stephanie shifted uncomfortably beside Harrison. She looked like she wanted to apologize again, or maybe just disappear entirely. I hope there are no hard feelings about your departure, Harrison said, though his tone suggested he was fishing for information about our recent client acquisitions. Hard feelings? I laughed softly. Harrison, firing me was the best thing that ever happened to my career. I should probably thank you. The color drained from his face as the implications of my words sank in. Around us, other conversations continued, but I could sense that people were paying attention to our interaction. If you'll excuse us, Harrison said abruptly, taking Stephanie's arm and steering her away from our conversation. But not before I caught the flash of panic in his eyes. James and I exchanged glances. I think that went well, he said with a grin. The rest of the evening was a triumph. We were approached by 7 potential clients, 3 of whom requested formal meetings within the next week. 2 industry journalists asked for quotes about our rapid growth. A major trade publication wanted to schedule an interview about successful partnership models in competitive markets. Meanwhile, I noticed that Harrison and Stephanie spent most of the evening huddled in corner conversations with their remaining clients. From the body language I observed, those conversations weren't going well. Around 10 o'clock, Amanda found me near the bar. You look amazing, she said, giving me a quick hug. And I have news. I put in my 2 weeks' notice yesterday. Really? James offered me a position as senior accountant. Better pay, better benefits, and most importantly, better leadership. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. Tom's leaving too. His last day is Friday. That meant Harrison was losing his top project manager, his best salesperson, and his most experienced accountant all within the same month. As the evening wound down, I found myself standing near the same spot where I had been humiliated 4 weeks earlier. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was literally standing in the place where my old life had ended and my new life had begun. Harrison appeared beside me, looking haggard despite his expensive suit. We need to talk, he said quietly, glancing around to make sure no one could overhear us. Do we? I asked, genuinely curious about what he could possibly want to discuss. This has gone far enough, he said, his voice tight with barely controlled anger. You're destroying my company. I turned to face him fully, studying his expression. I'm not destroying anything, Harrison. I'm simply succeeding in a new environment. If that's somehow damaging to your business, maybe you should examine why. You know exactly what you're doing, he hissed. Stealing my clients, poaching my employees. I haven't stolen anything, I interrupted calmly. Clients are choosing to work with us based on our reputation and capabilities. Employees are choosing to work for us because we treat them with respect. These are business decisions, not personal attacks. Harrison's jaw clenched. I made you. Everything you know about this industry, you learned working for me. I smiled at his desperation. You're right about one thing. I did learn a lot working for you. I learned how not to treat people. Look, Harrison said, his voice becoming pleading rather than angry. We can fix this. Come back. I'll give you a promotion, better salary, whatever you want. Just stop this corporate warfare. The offer was everything I had wanted 6 months ago. A year ago, I would have been thrilled to hear Harrison acknowledge my value so explicitly. Now, it just sounded pathetic. You fired me publicly to humiliate me, I said quietly. You called me dead weight in front of 500 people. You destroyed 8 years of my professional life to make room for your girlfriend. And now you want to fix it? I made a mistake, he admitted, the words clearly difficult for him to say. I let personal issues cloud my judgment. But we can move past this. I looked around the ballroom, taking in the scene of my former colleagues networking and celebrating. Some of them were probably discussing the dramatic shift in our industry's power structure. Others were likely speculating about how much longer Harrison's firm could survive the hemorrhaging of talent and clients. The mistake wasn't firing me, I said finally. The mistake was thinking I needed you to succeed. The mistake was believing that humiliating me would make you more powerful. The mistake was underestimating what I was capable of when I was finally free to prove myself. Harrison opened his mouth to respond, but I held up my hand. This conversation is over. Enjoy the rest of your evening. The following Monday morning brought the news I had been expecting. Tom called me from his car, having just finished his exit interview. It's worse than we thought, he said, his voice a mixture of relief and sympathy. The Henderson account officially terminated their contract this morning. Peterson Industries is following suit on Wednesday. Morrison Group is reviewing their options, which means they're already shopping for alternatives. The dominoes were falling faster than I had anticipated. Losing 3 major accounts in 1 week would be devastating for any company, but for Harrison's firm, it was potentially fatal. How's Harrison handling it? I asked. Not well. He called an emergency staff meeting and basically blamed the entire situation on outside interference and corporate espionage. Nobody bought it. Everyone knows exactly why this is happening. And Stephanie? Tom was quiet for a moment. She submitted her resignation this morning. Said she wasn't cut out for senior management and wanted to return to her previous role. Except Harrison can't demote his girlfriend without admitting that promoting her was a mistake. The irony was perfect. Harrison had destroyed my career to advance Stephanie's, and now Stephanie was walking away from the position that had cost me everything. There's something else, Tom continued. The board scheduled an emergency meeting for Friday. Word is they're discussing new leadership. Friday's board meeting lasted 6 hours. I heard about the results from Amanda, who heard about them from someone who heard about them from someone else, the way news always travels in small professional communities. Harrison was out. Officially, stepping down to pursue other opportunities, but everyone understood the reality. He had been removed by unanimous vote of the board of directors. The company would be restructuring under new management, but the damage was already done. 3 more clients had departed during the week, and 2 additional employees had submitted resignations. Meanwhile, James and I were busier than we had ever imagined possible. The major contract that had started our partnership was proceeding ahead of schedule. We had hired 4 new employees, including Amanda and Tom. Our monthly revenue was already exceeding our most optimistic projections. Industry publications were calling our success story unprecedented and a masterclass in reputation management. We had been invited to speak at 3 major conferences about building successful partnerships and managing business transitions. Most satisfying of all, we were genuinely helping our clients achieve their goals. The work was challenging, rewarding, and appreciated, everything my previous job had not been. That Friday evening, James and I celebrated by opening a bottle of champagne in our new office. We had moved to a larger space to accommodate our growing team, and the view from the conference room overlooked the city skyline. Exactly 1 year after my humiliation, I received an invitation to speak at the annual industry gala, not as an attendee, but as the keynote speaker. The theme was resilience and innovation in modern business, and the organizers specifically requested that I discuss my journey from corporate employee to successful entrepreneur. Standing on the same stage where my old life had ended, I looked out at an audience that included many of the same faces who had witnessed my downfall 12 months earlier. But this time, they were there to hear my story of triumph. A year ago, I stood on this stage and learned one of the most valuable lessons of my career, that being fired can be the best thing that ever happens to you, if you're brave enough to see it as an opportunity rather than a defeat. The audience was captive, hanging on every word. I spoke about resilience, about the importance of treating people with respect, about the way reputation and relationships matter more than politics or power games. Near the back of the room, I spotted Harrison sitting alone at a small table. He looked older, defeated, like a man who had learned too late that success built on cruelty is never sustainable. Our eyes met for a brief moment. I offered him a small, genuine smile, not of triumph, but of forgiveness. His story was a cautionary tale, but it didn't have to define the rest of his life any more than that terrible night had defined mine. As I concluded my speech to thunderous applause, I realized that the best revenge isn't destruction, it's success so complete that your former enemies become irrelevant to your happiness. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you becomes the first chapter of your greatest story. What's your story of turning disaster into triumph? Have you ever had a moment that felt like the end but turned out to be a beginning? I'd love to hear about it in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this journey from humiliation to success, hit that subscribe button, because everyone deserves to hear stories that remind them that no setback is permanent when you refuse to give up on yourself.